How are we doing, ladies and gentlemen? We are at the All-Star break, a much-needed break for the Bulls, and I don't know about you guys, but for myself as well, and not just spending so much mental energy on this team. But with the All-Star Weekend now past, we've got a few days before basketball starts up again. I thought it would be a great time to do a mailbag video. I think the last time I did one of these, it was probably during the off-season, and with no new Bulls news coming out as of right now, we haven't heard anything in terms of the Bulls pursuing some buyout candidates, no updates really on any player injuries, so why not? Let's go through some of these questions and things that are on your guys' mind. I'm also going to be doing another hot takes video soon. If you've been following the channel for a really long time, I used to do these once a week, but I dialed it back a bit, and now I'm doing them more or less once a month. So leave your hottest Bulls takes in the comments below for a future video on that. But with that, let's get into some of these questions, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You were listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Now, some of these I'm going to be going through a little more quickly. I wanted to get through as many questions as possible. There were also a lot of questions and some that were similar, so I consolidated a few of them. But this first one comes to us from Carl Cadiz. Do you think we have a chance of leaving the 9th spot? Where do you think we can end up? So it's really hard to see a world in which the Bulls actually jump above the 9th seed. They're currently 4 games back behind both the Magic and the Heat, who are tied, 4.5 games back behind the Pacers, who currently sit 6th, which I know to some doesn't sound like a lot of games to make up in the standings, but at this stage in the season, when you only have 27 games left to go, making up 4 games is a lot, because not only do you really have to start stringing together some wins consistently, going on some actual winning streaks, but also having the teams ahead of you start to slide and lose a bunch of games in just a matter of a few short weeks. All of that is a very tall order. Now, of course, a lot can change with injuries. Do the Heat or Magic suffer major injuries to their team that makes them fall in the standings? But barring that, I really don't see the Bulls moving up beyond 9th. I don't think they'll fall below 9th either. Maybe if they really start struggling post All-Star break with some of the tough games they have ahead of them, they'll fall to 10th, but they're not falling out of the plan. The Nets are really bad, and there's enough separation there that I can't see a world in which the Bulls would actually fall out of the play-in at this point. Next up, we've got Dave is a Beastie. If you could land any superstar, which player would you bring to the Bulls? I mean, if we're saying there would be no cap impact, no luxury tax restrictions, and we could just bring them into the team at no cost, I don't see how you can't take Nikola Jokic. In my view, he's the best player in the world. Yeah, Embiid and Giannis are right there, but there is just something about Jokic's game that has such a massive impact on winning, because everything he can do on the court with his court vision and level of IQ is just unmatched. Luka would be right up there as well, and maybe if I'm thinking much more long-term, it would be Luka because he's a little bit younger, but Jokic doesn't come with a lot of drama and baggage, really doesn't have an ego, just hoops and knows what to do to get the most out of his team. Taking Jokic hands down. Next up, we've got RC Villapando. If you were Adam Silver for a day, how would you fix the All-Star Weekend events and schedule? It's pretty jarring to see people were booing the judges of the slam dunk contest, and their boos were actually warranted. Well, I'm going to be honest with you all, and I'll probably do a video of some kind on this topic on the NBA channel. I didn't watch a single second of the All-Star game. Not the intros, the halftime, closing ceremony, none of it. Now, in the past, I've watched a little bit of the game here and there, but I've never really been into it. All-Star Saturday Night, on the other hand, I used to like, but now it's become so overdone with sponsorships and advertising. The players, they're not really into it. The slam dunk contest was horrible. Looking at that glowing green court while the players were doing the three-point contest was just painful on my eyes. I'm sure it was terrible for them. I mean, I don't even know at this point. If I'm Adam Silver, I honestly just do away with All-Star Weekend entirely. It's not that fun and exciting. It's not genuine. The players don't care or try, because why would they? They're not going to risk getting injured for a meaningless exhibition game. I would just give the players a week's worth of rest. Stop trying to capitalize on every money grab you can get from a sponsor and have a week-long break in the season. I mean, I say that, but I'm sure if I was actually in that position and was expected to generate revenue for the league as a part of my job, I would maybe approach it differently, but my knee-jerk reaction is just get rid of All-Star Weekend entirely. Next up, we've got Grant Jackson. When Zach comes back and he's still on the team, does he come off the bench? Well, we already know Zach isn't going to be coming back this season, and I find it very unlikely the Bulls hold on to him beyond this season. He's going to get moved in the offseason. I would be shocked if he didn't. But it's mainly because the Bulls are going to be hard-pressed to stay under the tax line if they're re-signing Demar and Patrick Williams, while also still trying to keep Zach on the roster. But in the event he's somehow still here, at the season opener, yeah, there's no way he's coming off the bench. For a guy who still holds a grudge for Billy Donovan benching him last season when he shot, what, 2 for 15 in a bad loss to the Orlando Magic. You think he's getting benched? Yeah, would never happen. Not saying it's not justified, but the Bulls would never do that. For this next one, do you think DeMar DeRozan will make the Hall of Fame? Also, if Coby White becomes an All-Star next season, how many All-Star selections do you think he will get in his career? For DeMar at this point, I would say it's 50-50 that he makes the Hall. Basketball Reference gives him a 46% chance of making the Hall of Fame, and while I normally would say no, he won't, the Basketball Hall of Fame is almost a bit of a joke in terms of some of the players they let in. Like, if Tracy McGrady is going to be a Hall of Famer, why can't DeMar DeRozan? For DeMar, what he's missing is championships, obviously, and also good playoff runs. But what he does have to his advantage is his longevity and the fact that he'll likely end his career in the top 25 all-time scoring list, which everyone in the top 25 in the all-time scoring list is already a Hall of Famer or soon will be one when they retire. For Coby, it's tough to say because the Bulls really have to start winning in order for him to get multiple All-Star bids. Like, if the Bulls tear things down and start rebuilding, with Coby White being one of the main pieces on this team while they go through a number of losing seasons, it's going to be harder for him to get All-Star nods when the team record isn't that great. A team record isn't always the determining factor for an All-Star being selected, but it is a big piece when deciding a player's All-Star candidacy. But to answer the question, if Coby keeps trending in the direction he has been and keeps getting better, I could see him maybe being a 3 or 4-time All-Star in his career. Next up, we've got Sake, I believe it is. What do you think is the worst mistake the Bulls made over the 2010s? Jimmy Butler, signing D. Wade, Lowry, GM, coach. This is going to sound weird, and I might be labeled a hater again for this, but the worst decision post-2010 was the new front office deciding to build around Zach LaVine. And look, I've been saying this since I started the channel. Not overtly saying it in these terms, but more so around the fact that, is Zach really that guy? Is he a guy you build a franchise around? Not with, but around. Is he a max level player? Is he a number one option on a championship team? And while yes, the Jimmy Butler trade was a mistake in hindsight, I almost kind of understood it at that time because I love Jimmy Butler, but he was a bit up and down in terms of his demeanor and attitude for this team. The Bulls weren't winning with him after they traded Rose, not that that was all Jimmy Butler's fault, but they weren't going to win a title with him. And rather than waiting until Jimmy got older and his trade value was even lower, they pulled the trigger and traded their most valuable asset. That's what the Bulls should have done in that first season in which Zach LaVine was an All-Star and he was at his peak. Instead, they knew they had to do something to keep Zach happy and around and start building a winning roster, and they prematurely hit the accelerator button, trading for Vucevic, then adding DeMar and Lonzo Ball. And then of course they signed Zach to a max contract the following offseason. Everything they have done in terms of going full-on win now was to build around Zach LaVine. And that was the biggest mistake when they could have just stuck with the youth movement of Lauri Markkanen, Coby White, and Patrick Williams and got a big haul for Zach to even further bolster their rebuild. Kind of like what the Spurs did in trading DeJounte Murray, a star player in his prime, but they knew he wasn't going to be winning them titles or fit their overall timeline because he was a little bit older, so they traded him for 3 first-round picks and got maximum value. And what makes this an even bigger mistake is because it's led to all of these downward decisions from there, clinging onto this idea of continuity and now being stuck in a place where they can't make a trade for Zach LaVine and would just be happy to do a salary dump move to get him off the books. Next, we've got Weird Eat Dusk. What teams in the playoff mix do you think the Bulls realistically have a chance against? Which are the teams that we should fear the most? I mean, there are a few teams that I would prefer to see the Bulls go up against because I think they would be better matchups. Well, one, if the Sixers are still without Joel Embiid come playoff time, I would take the Sixers and the Bulls could have a shot against them. I love Tyrese Maxey, but he's not willing his team to winning a 7-game series as the primary option. He's just not there yet. Another team, I know some are going to say I'm crazy for this, but the Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks are a better team than the Bulls, no question. They have more talent, but the Bucks are a terrible team defensively and haven't been able to figure it out. And given the Bulls' struggle on offense, going against a team that isn't especially good on defense would actually benefit them. And the Bulls and their defense, if they can just take it up a notch like we have seen them play in recent games, I'm not saying they would win a series against Milwaukee, but they could give them problems. And it also helps that the Bucks are older and much slower on offense than most of these young gun, high octane teams the Bulls really struggle against. Teams to fear, I mean the Celtics obviously, and I wouldn't want to see the Knicks in the playoffs. If they're healthy, they're a very deep team and a team that the Bulls do not match up well against with their size and floor spacing. Next up, we've got David Lvov. On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you want to see a rebuild retooling around a core of Coby, Io, and Pat? Keep up the good work. Greetings from Germany. Well, appreciate the kind words, and it's always so crazy to me to see people from all over the world watching the channel. Just speaks volumes to how much this team fandom really runs deep globally. But as to your question, on a scale of 1 to 10 for a rebuild, I mean, you guys know me, I've said it before, it's painful going through a rebuild and watching your team lose night after night after night with no end in sight. And the other thing about a rebuild is that it's not like this front office has really given us confidence that they can actually build a team from the ground up. They had an opportunity to do that when they took over the reins of this organization. Didn't like what they saw, and they pivoted to try to win now, and it's since then backfired. But at the same time, I'm also so ready for this era of Bulls basketball to be over. And so if I had to put it on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably go with something like a 7 or 8 and wanting to see a rebuild after this season. Next, we've got B-Ball Prods. If you could bring back any player that's played for the Bulls back to the Bulls besides MJ, who would you choose and why? Well, if it's not MJ and we can go with anyone, while I think most will agree Scotty and Derrick Rose are more talented, I would still bring back Joakim Noah, and mainly because this team, the Bulls team of this season, needs a guy like Noah more than anything. A fighter on the court, a hustler, high effort guy, a guy who will let you have it in the locker room if you're not working hard enough. A guy that will energize the team and get them motivated, and also something the Bulls really need: rim protection, interior defense, and an underrated aspect of Noah's game, his passing as a big man would be used so well in today's NBA, with centers being that hub on offense, which the Bulls are kind of trying to do with Vucevic, but it's not really working out. With Noah, such a smart player on offense as a playmaker, and yeah, again, more importantly, bringing that dog-like mentality that this roster absolutely needs. Next up, we've got small package, okay? Will Coby White end up becoming a better Bulls player than Zach LaVine? Oof. That's a tough one, just too early to say, because while I love Coby's growth this season and he has well exceeded any expectations that I ever had of him, I need to see him replicate this and continue to grow for multiple seasons. Like, as much as we like to criticize Zach LaVine, and this has just been a bad season for him all around on so many fronts, don't forget that he was one of the best scorers in the game of basketball and very efficient overall on offense with his shooting. I'd like to think that Coby can get there, but I do feel like it would be incredibly premature to say that Coby will end up becoming a better Bull than Zach LaVine. Next up, we've got Sports Vids. What position will the Bulls target in the first round next year? So I assume you mean this year, as in this upcoming draft, because the Bulls actually don't have their first round pick next year unless it falls in the top 10. But for this upcoming draft in 2024, I don't really think the Bulls will focus on positional need in the draft, more so looking at size and just trying to find shooting. They still need shooting, they still need size, things we've been talking about for over a year now, and rather than looking at a given position going into the draft, they'll look for a combination of best player available and shooting/size. Anyway, guys, I will end it there for this mailbag. Appreciate you all for leaving your questions. Make sure you get your hot takes in the comments below for an upcoming video. As always, be sure to subscribe, and I will see you all in the next one.